Today's episode is going to be on True West by Sam Shepard, and we're going to speak about how to break down this script. Sometimes I may actually go into it in depth, at other times I may not be interested in going in depth, but if you follow long enough, you will start to get the pattern and the idea of how deep you can actually go with this. Okay, so first things first, when we start to look at certain plays, we start to look at it from the point of view of the playwright. In this case, we start to look at who is Sam Shepard, right? We look at things like, where is he from, right? We look at how does that actually influence him writing this play? What is his perspective in life? What is his history? What is his past? From the sense that you can get. And the reason why I say this is because you can start to allow certain aspects of the play or piece to come out if you know who the writer is and their intention for actually writing this. We also start to look at the time period which this is written in. It's the 1980s. So then we start to look at what is basically the 1980s all about. When I say that, what I mean is 1980s is a very different time to what we have now. It stands to have a lot of different cultural zeitgeist. It stands to have a lot of different perspectives and things that are gauged on the political spectrum, on the social spectrum, on the geographical, economical, and other things which might influence the idea of this play as a whole, right? Then we start to venture into True West, what that could mean. If we don't have a clear understanding of what it means, it's not so much important to try to guess it or try to be so deep in it to try to make sense of it. That could come later of what it is. True West, in a sense, I believe this play is based in the Midwest of America in the 1980s. So then it would influence certain things like, of course, as I said, the political, economical, social, geographical, all those other aspects that are bigger than this play. And why I say this is important, once again, is because it influences and is colored for this play. And because if it's colored in this way, it allows you to make decisions that are not based on you, but are based on this play. And that's where this importance lies, because the basis of this play and how you interpret it and the truths that you can bring to it are very so much more in the script. Because one thing I start to see with plays put on from either a director's perspective, or even a filmmaker, or even an actor making those choices, they start to make these very colorful, flavored choices which make no real sense to where the playwright was coming from, right? Once again, and who they are, which is very important, and how they're thinking. So this actually draws a lot of themes, because theme is very, very important. It's one thing that people like to describe it in one word, in one idea, to say, oh, this thing is about love, or this thing is about hate, or this thing is about war, or this thing is about greed, or this thing is about family, which doesn't really delve deeper on the point of view of what the playwright was trying to say. Right? That's where we're getting to. Now, if you can almost understand it, or understand the playwright to understand the theme, we can start to create choices which reflect things like the place or the environment, right, or the stage, and things which could build this world. Also, the characters, which are things like what their influence is through dress, through their ideas, through how they stand against this thing. For example, are they for this theme or are they against this theme? Once again, are they for this theme or are they against this theme that we find out? And it's something that doesn't have to be immediately worked out, but it could come as you start to read the play and as you start to understand it, or whether you're an actor or a director, you start to actually rehearse and put it up in that sense. So if we move along and we start to look at the characters, it's the first thing people want to focus on as an actor. You're like, what is my character? How do I start this thing? You know, that's the biggest thing that people kind of, when I say people, I mean actors, where they gravitate towards certain roles because they're always like, what is my character? Does this character have a mustache? Or does this character have a limp? Or does this character have an accent? Or does this character have X, Y, Z? Right? And they start to imagine this character of what it could be, and there's nothing wrong with that. But where I'm saying you could pull out the truth and pull out more of the information on the character and how to pin the character within the theme and within the place, then it becomes more truer and more realistic to the audience. So the character in itself can be formed basically on ideas of, as people know, the physical, psychological, emotional, and intellectual aspects, right? But when we look at these characters, we're starting to find within those terms what categories, if any, would they mostly lean in. And that's our starting point, right? And these are the clues. We're kind of like detectives trying to work it out. So the first things first, we'll look at Austin. Austin is described as early 30s, which gives you also a sense of where he is in his stage of life. Early 30s in the 1980s is very, very different to being early 30s in the 1970s, in the 1960s, in the 1950s, in the 1940s, etc., etc. And the reason why I say is because there's certain expectations when we look at it from the point of view of Austin of how that could impact him psychologically. He doesn't know anything beyond 1980 because you got to remember you're playing a character that's set within their time, and if they're set within their time, then you can't actually get up on stage and play yourself. You use aspects of yourself, but you play it through a point of view of that character in the 1980s, right? Then we start to delve into the makeup of, let's say, their wardrobe. Now, most people use the word wardrobe or costume, but I say wardrobe. I say wardrobe because wardrobe tries to give the character more of a personal edge. And if you start to personalize this character and give him enough life, then that character becomes real. And by that character, I really mean you. I mean an aspect of you. If I mean an aspect of you, I mean that aspect of you that's trying to find and touch into what that character is. So if we were to look at Austin, and we go to the next point, he's said to have light blue sports shirt, light tan cardigan sweater, clean blue jeans, white tennis shoes. Beyond that, it doesn't really describe the character anyway psychologically. It doesn't describe him emotionally, but it gives you enough of a clue that obviously these things are prevalent to the 1980s, but how are they more personalized to the actor? When we talk about things when they're personalized, what we mean is not personalized to you. What I mean is personalized to the character, right? So if he was going to wear a light blue sports shirt, he'd have a reason for that. It wouldn't just be, oh, I put on a sports shirt today because that's what the costume designer gave me, or that's what the director told me to wear. No, you look at it as the light blue sports shirt. There is a reason why he actually put that in there, why Sam Shepard said he's wearing this for a reason. And that reason has to be personal to you as the actor through the lens of the character. Which means the justification of him wearing the light cardigan sweater, clean blue jeans, and white tennis shoes kind of gives you a general kind of image of what Austin is. Very clean, very put together in a way, trying to be middle class and proper, I guess, for the sense of the 1980s. And how do we get a clue of that? I mean, in the best sense, if we move on to Lee is his older brother, so we already know the dynamic or the relationship between the two. We know the relationship is their brothers. Now, there's a lot more to just having a general relationship, but we'll leave that for the time being, okay? His older brother is early 40s. Now, straight away we look at this and we say, there is a great connection between these two ages. There is a huge age gap, which means already they could be thinking very differently. Which means that the relationship, if we go back here, of brothers, it gives you a clue of their youth, right? Their childhood, of how they grew up, how they treated each other, and what standing did they have. If they were the same age, maybe they had certain understandings of each other. Maybe that's a choice that you can make. Maybe the other choice is that as they were growing up, Lee, because he was his older brother and he had that age gap between him, maybe he was the bigger bully. Maybe he was the kid that was, using his brother for certain things, to put him in his place. Or maybe not. That's kind of the choice that you start to make, whether it's with the director, whether it's a personal choice. Then we start to look at the differences of, let's say, Austin and Lee. So we look at Lee. He has a filthy white t-shirt. He has tattered brown overcoat covered with dust, blue baggy suit pants from the Salvation Army, a pink suede belt, pointed black 40s dress shoes, scuffed up, holes in the soles, no socks, no hat, long pronounced sideburns, Gene Vincent hairdo, and 2 days growth of beard, bad teeth. You can already start to imagine or think about at least why Sam Shepard decided to give such a description to Lee and not Austin. Even that difference in just the way they look, you can start to imagine that they're pretty much the odd couple. If you can peg them as a generalization on how to play these two characters, you can say it could be the essence of The Odd Couple. If you know what that is, it's based on a play. They also did a film version of it. But it's basically where you have the one character, which is, the clean, well put together, clean cut guy. And he's living with this other guy, which is the obviously complete opposite, hence the name The Odd Couple. So if we go back to Lee, we start to get a general idea, possibly a starting point of how to play this character. And by I mean play, start to make certain choices around it. See, if we go back to Sam Shepard's wording and we look at this moment where he says his early 40s, filthy white t-shirt. What's it filthy from? You ask yourself, what is it? Is it oil? Is it dirt? Is it, stains from blood? What is it? And that's the choice that you start to make as an actor. This is your right to say, if the wardrobe department just gives me a general filthy white t-shirt, you ask yourself whether you can put it on there yourself, talk to the director and work out certain things, or whether you can't. If you can't, then you ask yourself, what is the filth that's on there? Right? Why this is important, and you might think this is just splitting hairs here, but why do you think it's so important to actually look at this? Because the actors that the audience believe are those actors that believe not the words that they speak, but the situation that they're in. And part of that exists from knowing what your filthy t-shirt is. Because I'd put it to you, if you go to your closet and you look at your clothes and you look at a possible stain on a t-shirt that you have or have had, that at one point something might have spilled on it, you know exactly what that spill is from, whether it's from wine or whether it's from the dirt, or whether it's from food, or whether it's from a certain circumstance or a certain time, a certain place that's actually made this shirt filthy. So by and large, we have to put that there as actors. We have to create that, because to become a real person, you have all these little intricacies around you, and as an actor, you don't really believe in them up until you create them or make them or imagine them. So then we go back to saying a tattered brown overcoat with covered with dust. So it already says dust. So where is the dust coming from? From what? From where? Now, it might reveal it in the play itself. It might not. If it reveals it, then great. You can justify the event that created the dust. If not, then you create it. Look at the dark blue baggy suit pants from the Salvation Army. So already it tells you, by Sam Shepard telling us it's the Salvation Army, it allows you to get a perception of how to play this character. Now, where that truth comes in is knowing that if Lee is spending money at the Salvation Army, he's obviously not looking as good as his brother. Now, why is he spending it there? Maybe we find out in the play, maybe we don't. But we can start to assume certain things to say the Salvation Army is for people that are, for the most sense, trying to thrift shop, trying to save money on certain things. And why is Lee saving money on certain things? Now we ask ourselves, does he have work? Does he not have work? We either find out or we start to imagine it. If we look at the pink suede belt, there's a reason why he would use that pink suede belt. He could have used any other belt, but maybe it could be a fashion statement. Maybe he's had this belt given to him by his mother, or maybe it's just something he found, but it's something to justify. Pointed black 40s dress shoes cuffed up. So 40s dress shoes cuffed up. You ask yourself, why would he wear 40s dress shoes in comparison to, let's say, Austin wearing his white tennis shoes? Yeah, maybe he has, or he thinks there's a certain sense of style about him, or maybe he's living the dream of that 1940s wanting to be a superstar, or who knows. We start to imagine these things and create these things. We don't necessarily lock them down, but we start to think about these things. Holes in the soles, which already starts to tell us. Obviously, if we go back, it says scuffed up. Holes in the soles, no socks, no hat, long pronounced sideburns. Long pronounced sideburns, that tells me that this man is living in the 70s, because that feels like that's the era and that's the time of the sideburns. Maybe I'm missing that era, but I'm just going off the top of my head, which means you have certain people that you look at and you go, they're kind of stuck in that time. They're kind of stuck in their own youth or in their own childhood or the best period of their lives. So then their wardrobe kind of reflects that as well, unconsciously. Going back to these shoes, if we look at them, they're scuffed up, holes in the soles, no socks. So that means they're either worn in, which makes more sense rather than him actually buying these shoes. But why doesn't he throw them away? You ask yourself, for what reasons could Lee keep these shoes, these dress shoes. Maybe it's his favorite pair, maybe somebody gave it to him, but it warrants enough for him to keep it. It's not just him looking like a hobo, like a general thing which most people will look at. It's actually, what is it about those shoes that he wants to keep? And this is where we personalize again. We go back to the idea of personalization, right? We always ask ourselves from the point of view of the character. Okay? Not from your personalization, your life, but why would he have these shoes? Why would he still have these shoes? Maybe he can't afford any more shoes. I mean, if he's shopping in the Salvation Army, maybe the guy is very limited on the amount of money that he can spend. Maybe that's one option. Then we look at him not wearing socks, no hat, long pronounced sideburns, Gene Vincent hairdo. Now this is something you have to look up, right? This is important, the Gene Vincent hairdo, because if you look up who this Gene Vincent person is, and I'm not too familiar with this, so don't quote me on this, but if you look up who that person is and start to research more about them, you'll start to understand the psychology of Lee. And why that's important is you'll start to realize why he loves that hairdo. Why, and I'm assuming that Gene Vincent isn't of the time frame of 1980s. I could be wrong, but I feel like, just going on the top of my head, that Lee's character is more outside the fashion sense of the 1980s, whatever that trend of fashion is. So the Gene Vincent hairdo is possibly a time which he looked up to this person or some person that's had this hairdo, and there's a reason why he keeps it. So I get a sense that Lee in himself is this kind of like person that's stuck in this other time period, that his fashion sense reflects that as well. But you can't just put these clothes on and go, I like this feels right. This feels kind of, him looking like a hobo or looking disheveled or ragged or whatever it is. You have to justify in itself why he would wear those clothes to this extreme. And a part of him seemingly is because he's stuck in this different time, different era, just based on the little information that Sam Shepard gives us. So then we start to look at the next character, Saul Kimmer. Late 40s, Hollywood producer, pink and white flower print sports shirt, which is interesting because now you start to look at the trend, okay? It's the 1980s fashion sense, which is the sports shirt of both of these characters, of Austin and Saul. And the reason why I say that is because of the importance and the possibility of why now Austin could be wearing this sports shirt. Maybe he wants a successful career, that maybe he's kind of, trying to walk tall with these Hollywood producer types, right? Because he himself, as you will find out, is a writer, or he's trying to make a career of it. Saul Kimmer, late 40s. Already we start to see that maybe this guy, Saul, is already a little bit established. He's had a little bit of career, understanding of the game of what it is, possibility. He is a Hollywood producer, so he deals with a lot of people. He deals with a sales mindset. And this also allows me to think that he or his psychology is more based on the idea of knowing people to a sense or to a degree. Then we go to see him. He's wearing a white sports coat with matching polyester stacks, black and white loafers, which already gives me an idea of this guy being kind of in that scene. He's got a bit of money. He's kind of flashing it. But in a sense, what stands out to me, his essence, is this guy is a salesperson and he knows, with working with people, he knows, or he believes he knows, what's right and wrong. If we go to Mum is early 60s, mother of the brothers. She's a small woman, conservative, white skirt and matching jacket, red shoulder bag, 2 pieces of matching red luggage. Okay, so this gives you an idea of the type of person or the type of relationship she would have had with the boys. So if she's early 60s, she would have probably had them young, maybe in her 20s. So I'm assuming that these only being the 4 characters, at some point she was divorced or widowed from her husband. If we later on find out, that's a choice that you make as an actress. Or we look at it from a point of view of the type of thinking she would have. That's where we could start, because the big clue is, as Sam Shepard puts it, she's conservative. Or she wears a conservative white skirt and matching jacket, a red shoulder bag, 2 pieces of matching red luggage. Meaning that their mum would have had the possibility to have grown up, in, let's say, if it's the Midwest, and now we look at where in the Midwest, if we go back to it, if it's a predominantly white, middle-class Christian area, then that really lends itself to the mother being conservative, which now you can start to imagine what sort of person, or take a concept of her and how it relates to the actual place. So where the play takes place and the larger world in the sense, but also the room or the place. So if they were a middle-class Christian household, would they have Christian artifacts and certain things that the mother would have put there? Yes, possibly. That's a very strong choice. And how the mother was raised also, if this is the 80s, and now she's in the 60s, she's early 60s, it means that she was born in the 1920s. So if we look at it, we say to ourselves, the mother growing up and her time or her outlook, possibly with her parents, would have been a very Christian household, would have been a very conservative time and place, which once again goes back to just this word here. Even though she's wearing conservative things, it's also the mindset behind being conservative in order to dress a certain way and act a certain way. And now it leads to the psychology of the character and also other things because the psychology can bleed into the physical, and it can also bleed into the emotional and bleed into also the intellectual. So the scene takes place on the same set, which means that if we start to look at what that same place is, it is a kitchen and adjoining alcove and of an older home in a Southern California suburb. Okay. So there's clues here already of how this place is set up, or the idea of how we can personalize it. And it's one of these things, not only what Sam Shepard has put in bold, but also the idea of this thing is older, right? This house is old, meaning that you ask yourself questions. Did they grow up in this household? How long have they been there? And how much has the neighborhood changed? Then we ask ourselves, this is Southern California. What does that look like in the 1980s? Start to do your research. Go see some photographs, go see some films. Try to take in as much sensorial information as you can about Southern California. So then you can see what the suburbs are, and then you can kind of get a general idea of which house this could be on which street. Also say it's about 40 miles east of Los Angeles. The kitchen takes up most of the playing area to stage left. The kitchen consists of a sink, upstage center surrounded by counter space, a wall telephone, cupboards, and a small window just above. Just above it, bordered by neat yellow curtains. Stage left of a sink is a stove. Stage right, a refrigerator. The alcove adjoins the kitchen to stage right. There is no wall division or door to the alcove. It is open and easily accessible from the kitchen and defined only by the objects in it. A small round glass breakfast table mounted on white iron legs, 2 matching white iron chairs set across from each other. The 2 exterior walls of the alcove, which prescribe a corner in the upstage right, are composed of many small windows beginning from a solid wall about 3 feet high and extending to the ceiling. The windows look out to bushes and citrus trees. The alcove is filled with all sorts of houseplants in various pots, mostly Boston ferns hanging in planters at different levels. The floor of the alcove is composed of green synthetic grass. That is a lot to take in, but most of it in bold, which Sam Shepard puts there so you can easily match it when you're dress setting. Now, the important thing is, as an actor, you start to look at these small sections of this place and start to make them, once again, personal. You justify them. You look at things like the kitchen takes up most of the playing area to the stage left. The kitchen consists of a sink, upstage center surrounded by counter space, a wall telephone, cupboards. Okay, so you ask yourself, what is that wall telephone? Based on the 80s that we just spoke about, what could that telephone be, right? Cupboards, what's in those cupboards? What belongs in those cupboards? And a small window just above it, bordered by neat yellow curtains. Stage left of sink is a stove, stage right a refrigerator. So the stove has to be a certain type of stove, and the refrigerator, obviously, a certain type of refrigerator. What's inside the refrigerator? Is the refrigerator full? Is the refrigerator empty? If it's full, it tells me one thing about this play. If it's empty, it tells me another thing about this play. Maybe it tells us later what's in there. The alcove adjoins the kitchen to stage right. There is no wall division or door to the alcove. It is open and easily accessible from the kitchen and defined only by the objects in it. A small round glass breakfast table mounted on white iron legs, 2 matching white iron chairs set across from each other. So it's a certain type of area that's been set, place, which is important to consider because it really allows you to go, well, how long have these items been there? And how important are these items to these characters? The 2 exterior walls of the alcove, which prescribe a corner in the upstage right, are composed of many small windows beginning from a solid wall about 3 feet high and extending to the ceiling. The windows look out to bushes and citrus trees. That's important as well, because if the windows look out to the bushes and the citrus trees, what else is there next to them? And what kind of bushes are they? Are they big bushes, small bushes? Citrus trees. What type of citrus trees? Is it lemon? Is it mandarins? Is it oranges? Is it limes? What is it? And why I ask is so important because it becomes so personal to you that you could say, for an example, if they grew up in this place, the 2 kids, maybe that's the citrus tree that the boys actually used to during its harvest, used to go there and pick oranges together, and maybe that's where Lee threw some oranges at Austin. That's one possibility. And the other possibility is, who owns it? Is it them that own it, or is it the neighbors? If it's the neighbors, who is it? Is it John, the nice Italian man that always was there, to give oranges to the family? Or was it, some grumpy old man that they didn't really care about? That's something to think about. The alcove is filled with all sorts of houseplants in various pots, mostly Boston ferns hanging in planters at all different levels. So if we go back, the alcove is filled with all sorts of houseplants in various pots, meaning that there's a reason why Sam Shepard put all sorts of houseplants in various pots. There's a reason why that is there. Now, you can't just randomly put all sorts of houseplants in various pots. There's mostly Boston ferns hanging in planters at different levels. Now, why Boston ferns? This is really important to look at. Why? Why is it so important? Most people will say, well, it's just what is there. No, there's a reason why Sam Shepard said Boston ferns. And that could be because of a possibility of maybe they lived in a certain area which, the mother grew up with somebody having these ferns, which reminded her maybe it's some feeling that she has towards them, that this is why she has them there. Or it could be just a practical reason, which you need to justify also. The floor of the alcove is composed of green synthetic grass. Now that's interesting as well. There could be a reason why this green synthetic grass is there. That's important to look at, 100%. Okay, so if you look at the next part, all entrances and exits are made stage left from the kitchen. There is no door. The actors simply go off and come onto the playing area. Note on set and costume, the set should be constructed realistically with no attempt to distort its dimensions, shapes, objects, or colors. Sam Shepard was very adamant about this. No objects should be introduced which might draw special attention to themselves other than the props demanded by the script. So he knew the importance of what we're doing here, the script breakdown, and he knew why he put all these things into play. Why he put all the costumes, the sets and the place and everything. There's a reason for everything. If a stylistic concept is grafted onto set design, it will only serve to confuse the evolution of the character's situation, which is the most important focus of the play. So let me read that again. If a stylistic concept, he uses quotation marks, is grafted onto the set design, it will only serve to confuse the evolution of the character situation, which is the most important focus of the play. Now, certain people would put this play up and they'd say, well, I want to put it in a certain style, I'm going to put my flavor on it, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. If there is enough information and if the writer himself has gone to great lengths to justify why these characters are wearing the clothes they wear, behave the way they behave, in the place they behave, with all the circumstances that are grafted on top of it, it means that it is so important to him to thematically push his ideas, or more so, let his ideas unfold to the audience through the characters and through the serving of the ideas that he puts in there through, let's say, costumes, props, and set design, etc., etc. He says, likewise, the costume should be exactly representative of who the characters are and not added onto for the sake of making a point to the audience, which is very, very, very important. So, for the sake of making point to the audience, it tells me that Sam Shepard really knew these people or outline these characters for you to play them truthfully once you can delve and dissect this play, this script. So you could just play them with no force and no intention to force it upon the audience to really understand it. No. Once you make everything personal, once you justify it, and once you go through section to section, just like we did in the last hour, then you can start to unfold and create justifications on what's being given. Last point I want to make is note on sound. The coyote of Southern California has a distinct yapping, dog-like bark similar to a hyena. This yapping grows more intense and maniacal as the pack grows in. Numbers, which is usually the case when they lure and kill pets from suburban yards. The sense of growing frenzy in the pack should be felt in the background, particularly in scenes 7 and 8. In any case, these coyotes never make the long, mournful, solitary howl of the Hollywood stereotype. Which means what this tells me is Sam Shepard is going for this pure realism. So you already start to know his style. He's defined it, but even if you don't, you're starting to look at, through Sam Shepard's previous plays, and when we said research the playwright, you start to get, based on who he is, his frame of mind, his past history, what he was all about. He was also an actor, as far as I know, so he understands that kind of realism and the whole actor speak, so he knows how to dissect certain parts of this script and the characters and whatnot. So even when he talks about the coyote, which is another character in this play, he means it in the most realistic sense. So you'd need to go research and find out what this is. Even though he describes it, by knowing what this is, he also is giving you a note that says the yapping grows more intense and maniacal as the pack grows in numbers, which is usually the case when they lure and kill pets from suburban yards, which gives you an intensity possibility of this play moving forward. Now, that could be a side note to see the trajectory of this play and as it moves forward. The sense of growing frenzy in the pack should be felt in the background. There you go, particularly in scenes 7 and 8. In any case, these coyotes never make the long mournful sounds, mournful solitary howl of the Hollywood stereotype. So obviously, once again, he's not going for those stereotypes. He's trying to find what it is, keeping in mind this sound is very strong in scenes 7 and 8, which we can get in our next session. So I'm just going to leave it there. You guys let me know what you think, and we can either continue this or I might go into a different play.